Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Waste, Environment and Race, a community conversation hosted by the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board. I want to say a big thank you to you all for attending this evening, taking time out of your evenings. This is the second event in this series that's aiming to address the intersection of food, health, waste, and environmental and social justice. The first event was way back in the fall of 2020, which doesn't seem so very long ago, but it has been quite a while actually. There's been plenty going on since then to keep us all busy, but I'm delighted that we're finally able to have the second event in the series. We've got a panel of great speakers who are going to speak to their work, and also we're going to have a breakout room session where we'll get to hear the views of everybody in this event, so it'll be nice and interactive, and hopefully, as well as discussing some issues, we'll also get to discussing some solutions as well. The panelists and the moderators will be introduced in just a moment, but before we do get underway, I'm delighted to be able to welcome Lacey Tauber, who's the Legislative Director for Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. She's going to kick off the event by saying a few words about the topic and the Borough President's work in that area. Hi, Lacey, and welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here on behalf of Borough President Reynoso. And I just want to say how happy we are to see the SWAB hosting conversations like this, and that there are so many of you who came here to listen. We are new to the Borough President's office, and truly one of the things that we are the most excited about is working with the SWAB, because we love working on trash. You'll notice I didn't say we love talking trash, because I think if you're in the trash world, you've probably heard that pun too many times. But anyway, waste equity in particular has been a major priority for the Borough President since before he became an elected official. He grew up in the south side of Williamsburg, so he knew firsthand that all the truck traffic from the waste transfer stations nearby was contributing to health issues in his community. You may know this, but until recently, 75% of the city's trash, or the trash processed in the city, was processed in only 3 communities of color, North Brooklyn, the South Bronx, and Southeast Queens, with no thought to equitable distribution of that waste. So as council member, he championed and passed a bill to decrease the amount of trash allowed to be processed in these 3 communities, and to place a cap on the amount allowed in other neighborhoods, so that in the future, no one community will have to handle the whole city's burden. More recently, Borough President Reynoso championed the creation of a zone system for commercial waste. This new approach is going to fundamentally change this industry, not only to improve working conditions for the workers, but also to reduce vehicle miles traveled and emissions from commercial waste trucks by about half of what it is now, which will make a real meaningful difference in the EJ communities where these transfer stations are located. And it's also going to take into account the commercial haulers' plans for equity and route efficiency in the decisions about how the contracts for the zones are awarded. We were really disappointed last week to find out that the administration delayed implementation of the system by 3 more months after delaying it for 2 years due to the pandemic. So right now we're focusing on that. We actually sent a letter to the admin this morning, along with the Council Sanitation Chair, Sandy Nurse, as well as a number of other council members. So we're working on that really proactively, as well as advocating for universal curbside organics collection and other sustainable waste practices. Again, we're really excited to work with the SWAB on all of this. I unfortunately have to run to an event right now, but I'm so glad this is being recorded, because I intend to watch the whole thing, and I'm really looking forward to learning from all of you. So thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lacey. Thank you for taking the time to join us and giving us that great bit of background. So before we move on and get started with the event proper, I just wanted to say a few words about the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board, and also about our moderators. So First of all, the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board, also known as Brooklyn SWAB for short, great acronym, is a volunteer citizens advisory board. We're dedicated to helping the Borough of Brooklyn contribute to New York City-wide zero waste goals. We care about how waste issues affect our borough and work towards increasing community engagement to transform New York City into a place where material recovery is part of our culture. We advise the Brooklyn Borough President and city officials on policies and programs regarding New York City's waste prevention, reuse, and recycling. We're a board comprised of a diverse group of solid waste management industry leaders, waste reduction consultants, sustainability professionals, and concerned citizens. We have public monthly meetings which are held the first Monday of each month, currently via Zoom at 6:30 p.m. So the next one is April the 4th, I believe. And everyone's welcome to attend. It's open to the public. And then a few housekeeping items for tonight's event. You can change to speaker view by looking in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen. And while we do want to hear from you, chat's going to be disabled until the Q&A section so that we can give focus to our panel discussion. And with that, I'd like to introduce our moderators for this event, Brooklyn SWAB members Akhmose Ari-Hotep and Rhonda Keyser. Akhmose is a long-standing BkSWAB member, a former assistant site manager of Red Hook Compost, and currently property and hospitality manager at Regenerative Resource Network Regency. Rhonda, meanwhile, is also a BkSWAB member, and she's the education director at Cafeteria Culture, a leader in school cafeteria waste reduction. They're both heavily involved in the sector, as you can see. So with that, I'm delighted to hand over to them to run the panel section of this event. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Much appreciated, Ali. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to this evening's event. I am Akhmose Ari-Hotep, a member of the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board and a current property and hospitality manager at Regenerative Resource Networks in Brooklyn, as Oliver just shared. And yeah, I'm based in Red Hook, Brooklyn as well. And I'm also a professional trained composter trained under Domingo Morales in the David Buckle composting methodology. And I'm here with my co-host, one of my co-hosts, of my main co-host, Rhonda Kaiser, who is the Outreach Director for Cafeteria Culture and a present member of the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board. We are honored to have this incredible group of NYC change makers here tonight. We take the responsibility of being a reflection of our community in the Brooklyn SWAB, and we do strive in all of our events to represent a diverse array of organizations that are run by a diverse array of Brooklynites. Tonight, we aim to explicitly amplify the specific community leaders we've invited to speak about solid waste and environmental issues, specifically as it relates to race. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. And we are going to, first off, introduce our incredible speakers for the evening. Up first, we have the incredible Steve Affat. Steve is the program manager at Green City Force. Steve Affat is the program overseeing service, compliance, and development of GCF Corps members, originally from Maryland, DMV. He relocated to Brooklyn in 2006, following a career in media, marketing, and client services. After 10 years in the private sector, he refocused his efforts to pursue his lifelong passion for environmental education and stewardship. His volunteering efforts in various Brooklyn-based green spaces led him to the New York Restoration Project, where he completed 2 AmeriCorps, not 1, but 2 AmeriCorps service terms, eventually making his way to the NYC Compost Project and Green City Force. So if we can give a nice round of applause for Steve, that would be great. Up next, we have the incredible Jessie Taylor, who is a discard studies researcher and a zero waste advisor. Jessie Taylor is a certified TRUE, True Advisor, Waste and Racial Justice Consultant, journalist, and archivist, whose research centers the impact of colonialism and mismanagement of chronically disenfranchised communities. That's a mouthful, so I'm going to say that again. Jessie Taylor is a certified true advisor, waste and racial justice consultant, journalist, and archivist whose research centers the impact of colonialism and mismanagement of chronically disenfranchised communities. She is also a philosophy graduate student whose work is at the intersection of discard studies, genocide studies, and critical theory. Jessie is also the co-editor of Discard Studies and a member of the BPI Composter and Municipality Committee. Let's give a big round of applause for Jessie. And last but not least, a young man who I hold near and dear, Mr. Justin Craig. Justin Craig is of the Walcott Forum. He is a Walcott Forum coordinator at the Red Hook Houses Forum that is with Red Hook Initiative that is based in Red Hook, Brooklyn, doing incredible work. He was born in the South Bronx and raised all around NYC. Justin has been working with Red Hook Forum since 2020. Graduating from Green City Forest with the Trailblazer Award, awesome. Justin decided to take a deeper dive into the field of agriculture, justice, and sustainability through his position with RHI. Through youth empowerment and community engagement, Justin works to teach about the importance of farming healthy food and cultivating a healthy environment in his new position as Walcott Forum coordinator. Let's give a nice big round of applause. Awesome, awesome. So we are here today to, speak about environmental justice. And before we, dive deep into things, I just wanted to, acknowledge the ancestors who made a way for me and really all of us, to be on this land, the indigenous First Nations peoples. And yes, some of them were, Black skinned, and the, foundational Black Americans who were brought over here and enslaved as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge their contributions to what has got me here and brought us here for the evening. And also want to acknowledge Dr. Robert Bullard, the father of environmental justice, or known to be the father of environmental justice, for all the great work that he's done. He's one of many, but just wanted to speak his name and acknowledge him. So with that being said, before we get into speaking about environmental justice, we first have to have a look at defining what structural racism is first and foremost. So structural racism is identified as systemic and structural racism are forms of racism that are pervasively and deeply embedded in systems, laws, written or unwritten policies, and entrenched practices and beliefs that produce, condone, and perpetuate widespread unfair treatment and oppression of people of color, particularly Black Americans, with adverse health consequences. So that is the definition of structural racism that we obtained from healthaffairs.org. And can everybody see the PowerPoint that's on the screen? Of definition of structural racism. It's an iceberg. Or no? Can we see that or no?
Yep.
Okay,
yes,
awesome.
We can.
Yes.
So
Have it up on the screen.
Awesome. So as you can see, it's the shape of an iceberg. And if you know the structure of an iceberg, the bulk of the matter of what makes up the iceberg, the ice, is actually under water and what you don't see. And so, the top is, perceived, self-reported discrimination, racist acts, things of that sort, things that people face that is direct and overt racism. But the bulk of it is what goes unsaid, unspoken, it's a code and a way of being that is just pervasive in the system and American culture that we're in. And so some forms or examples of systemic and structural racism are that of political disempowerment, segregation. I would like to add segregation of appropriate resources, financial practices, such as who can get a loan and for the term of that loan, property taxes and how that affects the quality of schooling in our relationships. I would like to posit that redlining is a form of structural racism. The criminal justice system and what we see happening with people of color, in particular Black people, not being treated just, and the main center of attraction for this particular talk being environmental racism and what we face there. And so this is the world as we know it. It should not and it will not stay this way. Today is our step as a collective and as human beings to move our city and our world forward. The goal of this event is to identify how environmental racism shows itself, what solid waste challenges we all face, especially being in the borough of Brooklyn, and what tangible action steps we all can take in implementing environmental justice where we stand, specifically in our beautiful borough of Brooklyn. I think the key word is tangible. This is a conversation and we're utilizing words and ideas and critical thinking, but it's important that we keep in mind that we want to identify what action steps and what tangible items we can actually take to move things forward. Lastly, just want to touch on when most people think about racism, they probably think of racial slurs, hate crimes, or other overtly racist actions. There are, however, other less obvious yet ultimately even more destructive forms of racism. This is what I was talking about, the iceberg and what's not seen. Structural and systemic racism are often invisible, at least to those who are not its victims. This defines structural and systemic racism, explains how they damage health, and provides illustrative examples. Although we focus on how structural and systemic racism can harm the health of people of color, they also damage the health and well-being of a society overall, including the health and well-being of what's classified as white people. I'm gonna stop there because that's a lot of talking. And I'm going to pass the mic along to my co-host, Ms. Rhonda, and thank you all for allowing me to share that intro.
Great. Thank you so much, Akhmose, and just welcome to everyone. I'm really glad to be here. So excited. Thanks to Sherry and Liz and Kevin and Anne and everyone who has put this event together. And really thanks to our panelists for making this event what it is tonight. So we know already that environmental racism is nothing new, right? I mean, we've seen this slide. We shared it last time as well, if you were here last time. And it certainly bears repeating. It's basically systemic racism, but with direct health consequences. We have racially segregated communities, and they've often experienced the damaging health effects of environmental justice. Now, environmental justice, of course, is environmental injustice. Sorry about that. They're experiencing those health effects. But so there are all of these concerns, right? Drinking water, sewer infrastructure, more truck traffic in their neighborhood because they have, wastewater. They have, waste transfer stations, but also outdoor air quality, noise and traffic. All of these access issues, as Jesse's bio mentions, are super important and something that we want to look at as we move forward. These kinds of issues need to be embedded in every single aspect of policy, but especially in waste policy. I think we can move to the next slide. We want to advance environmental justice in New York City so that we can provide fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all New Yorkers. Everyone, we're all stakeholders. And so we want to be able to develop, implement, and enforce environmental laws, regulations, policies, and activities. sort of re-envision those policies and activities. So in December 2021, the Mayor's Office, of Climate and Sustainability released the scope of work, and they reported all of those issues as environmental justice issues. Now, in the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit in 1991 that was held in Washington, D.C., it was attended by well over 1,000 delegates, and it was probably the single most important event in the environmental justice movement's history. They believed that, as Robert Bullard spelled out too, and this at this event, the environmental justice affirms the need for urban and rural ecological policies to clean up and rebuild our cities and rural areas in balance with nature, honoring the cultural integrity of our communities, and provided fair access for all to the full range of resources. So I think we're going to dive into that. We will be diving into all of those issues and topics tonight. We won't solve them, but we'll certainly touch upon them. Okay, so let's turn to our speakers. So Akhmose, would you like to start us off with some questions, or do you each want to, yeah. Oh, you're muted.
I didn't want y'all to hear me crunching some ice that was in my drink. Apologies about that. Awesome, can y'all hear me now? Nice. Once again, want to welcome Steve, Jesse, and Justin, who are, three people who I've met in person and have had great conversations with, and who are doing phenomenal work in the world and are the next generation to bring about environmental justice and just do great work on planet Earth, period. So it's an honor to be co-hosting with Rhonda and to give these three persons a platform. So first question, could you all tell us a little bit about yourself and your work, and how did you come to your current role as well? So a little bit about who you are, your work, and how you attain that specific position. We can start with we can start with Stephen.
All right, there we go. All right, perfect. So good evening, everyone. Once again, Stephen Fatt, program manager over at Green City Forest. How I made my way over into this line of work, if you will, is honestly just trying to figure out how I can get more in touch with myself and like really just revisit what I was originally passionate about before moving to New York City, which was spending time outside and honestly working with the soil. And it's something that I think over time it's something that I found I think I've kind of forgot. I got caught up in work and chasing down a career and whatnot, which was fine. And at some point just realized, I want to get more involved with something that's actually meaningful to me. And so getting involved in the environmental sector was something that was, started off was trying to figure out, what direction I wanted to go in. And I was really just drawn in by the work that I was doing that was so focused on community education and stewardship, and trying to pave the way for next generations to come through and get excited about the work, and figure out how everyone can kind of put their own personal touch into what it is that we're doing. And so it wasn't something that I was necessarily looking for, specifically just the community aspect and really people coming together to get this work done. And it's honestly one of the things that's kept me in this work. And so it was a very long journey getting to where I am right now. And yeah, I'm pretty happy to be where I'm at. And so the work that we're doing at Green City Forest, it's interesting. I mean, for this conversation today, it's a perfect fit. I mean, what we do is, there's a lot that we do, but essentially we're focused in on the intersections of social, economic, as well as environmental justice, right? And how we can disrupt some of these systems that historically, have BIPOC folks disenfranchised. And so, we work with young adults and, bring them into the sustainability field by way of getting them involved with energy efficiency, having them heavily involved with agricultural work, community engagement, and also, self-development and growth. Because one of the things that we don't necessarily see as much in the space are the voices of BIPOC individuals and, of that community. And so, empowering folks and, letting the younger generation know that, your voices are important, and not just really just telling them, but like really by way of all the work that we do. And, we we get out there, we make sure that voices are being heard by way of either our calls or responses and chants. It's all in there, and so I don't want to take up too much time because we have other folks here that I'm sure, we'd like to hear from as well. But that's, that's my story, folks.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Stephen. That was awesome, man. 4 years I've known you and you're still just as, passionate. So salute, man.
Jesse, would you like to unmute and tell us about yourself and how you came to do what you're doing?
Sure. Hello. Thanks again to everybody who's joining tonight. My journey kind of started just as somebody who lived in a quote unquote environmental justice community. And I brought certain questions that I had about how things got to be that way into my academic research. And from there, I just studied more about waste colonialism and waste management in general, and the disproportionate impact on certain communities versus others, proximity to landfills, incinerators, etc. And from that research, I began working with a local New York City zero waste services company to be their education advocacy manager. And through them, I was also learning more about composting, joining the United States Composting Council and such, and just doing a lot of events through them, and then a lot of education with local NYC businesses like schools and nonprofits and such. So it's kind of been a nebulous journey, but I kind of have my toes dipped in a lot of different ponds in the waste world. But yeah, my journey to, I guess, BkSWAB specifically was just connecting with people here and realizing that we have this shared vision of trying to kind of get more people involved in these conversations, make the information more accessible to as many people as possible, and yeah, just a shared interest in centering waste and specifically environmental justice as it relates to waste and a larger climate justice movement. And that's the gist, basically.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Jesse.
Thanks all very much. Justin.
This just in.
Hi everybody. Thank y'all for coming out. Said it a million times, excited to be here, excited for this event, and appreciate the platform that so I can come on here and share my part of the story in this environmental justice way. So I'm Justin. I'm Red Hook Farms new Walcott coordinator this year, and how I got there is basically, well, I was in Steven's shoes, little Steven's shoes, but I was in cohort 20 in 2019, and I got there. I was kind of just looking for a job, and I was looking for like different things. I was looking at regular jobs, like, well, not regular, but like retail jobs and like jobs that work in like stores and things like that. And then I was kind of like applying, and then I saw a flyer for Great City Force, and I was like, oh, like reading about it, it was like, okay, like pay stipend, but we're like helping to feed people with farming, like we're getting educated on sustainability and we're giving back to the community. I was like, this just feels right. Like, I feel like this is something I could do. Like, we're feeding people. I've been hungry before. Like, this feels like meaningful. And I just gravitated towards it, and then went through the cohort, enjoyed everybody around me, enjoyed what I was doing, loved seeing the faces of the people who I was giving the produce to. Like, it's free. Yeah, it's free. Like, what? Healthy food for free. It was like amazing to see that. And then I started to matriculate to the program and learning a lot. I got to learn both sides of sustainability, not just in the field, but also like with technology. So I got to like do things like that through Green City Forest. And I got to bring all that knowledge to Red Hook Farms. I was working in Red Hook Farms actually with Green City Forest, and that's how I got connected. And I was like, okay, it's in the community. I could do something great for my community. They wanted me there. So I applied and got the job as farm assistant for my first year. Well, I got to be in the field working with youth from the community, people from all around New York coming to volunteer, compost site with Akhmose. It was amazing. And then we got to do, as we went on, I decided I wanted to work closely with the youth because our mission is actually being a youth-centered organization, because we feel that empowering the youth allows the community to thrive because they have all the energy, they have the voice, they have the ideas, they have, they're the vitalization of the community, and they're also like the next generation. So teaching them is to basically mold the future in a way. So I wanted to work directly with them so I could teach them exactly what I was learning, because I thought like, okay, if I knew this when I was younger, like I would be like a lot farther ahead, probably a lot healthier in my body, thinking about community in different ways and inspiring different people in different ways. So yeah, let me wrap this up too. So yeah, so I started working there as a farm education assistant in the next year, and then the year after that, I became farm coordinator, and now we're hoping to do great things. Like, and this year we're doing the rebuild. We're thinking about how can we be best situated for the community in our space. So I'm ready to engage and, get things going for this year. Appreciate y'all.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Your backgrounds are so fascinating and how you got here. And we appreciate all your work. Akhmose, do you want to dig in with the next question? Or?
Sure. So we've, went over the definition of what structural racism is. It's embedded in our systems and the structure and the fabric that make up our environment in this country. And we're here to speak about environmental injustice to make a way into having a more equitable setting for environmental justice. And so an example of environmental justice would be food apartheid. So the question is, how does structural racism and environmental injustice manifest for you and your organization? So as you go about your daily workings and dealings in the community, how does it show up for you and your organization, specifically as it pertains to food, health, waste, economic opportunity, any of those or all of those? So how does that show up for you and your specific organization? We can start with Jesse.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can we start with somebody else? I need a moment to formulate my thoughts.
Okay.
Awesome. We're going to go with Justin.
So I feel like structural racism and environmental injustice manifests in my community, needless to say, in many ways. And I believe it's in regards to food and health, waste, economic, and opportunity. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to say first, honestly, because I can count the stores around us on my hand, and like that's something I'm thinking about. And it's like mainly like bodegas, things like that. So we have like you said, Akhmose food apartheid throughout the community in Red Hook, and it's clear to see like how it's like structured basically. So, and it kind of like we all know it's like there's an intersection to this, so they all relate to different things. So like I honestly think it starts with like racism. So I got the opportunity to learn about redlining and go to the Gowanus conservatory basically, and got to see how Red Hook was redlined and how like things were structured for these things to happen. So we have it was first started off like, okay, like Black people over here, there were like signs saying like beware, like there are Black people over here, there are Hispanic people over here, things like that. And those zones were basically redlined to and basically disenfranchised in ways that like, okay, we have like a highway that goes directly across, cutting off Red Hook from Carroll Gardens basically. And behind that highway, you have the craziest food apartheid. We have a Sea Town, another grocery store, and then a whole bunch of bodegas around here. And then we have Walgreens about what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes away if you have a car. And then super far in the back over there, in the back of Red Hook, you have the projects. And then right outside of the projects, you have $1 million homes, things like that. So the way things are structured, and then in the middle of the projects, it's just, and then there's white people that live in those sections around, and then Black and Hispanic people that live inside. So things like that, structural racism. So it starts like it's all intersection in those ways. So like redlining allowed it for them to make this a zone where we have a whole bunch of industrial buildings and like industrial, like we could, what is it, industries that create like a whole bunch of pollution and waste to the air, and that affects our health in so many different ways. We have we don't have any say in what goes on here, so they pulled up all of our trees over here. If we look outside the window, it's like a whole bunch of construction going on, and these are things that like we feel like we have no say in, because like they just happen over time, like they just happen out of nowhere. It's like, and like they're not pushed politically, like it's not on the news for us, it's not going around giving flyers, we're not getting a petition for these things. And those things all stem to like I'm thinking about like how those things are like on the back end of that, when we don't feel like we have to say these things, like they just come through, and all of a sudden there's construction everywhere, and we don't know how that happened, when it happened, why it's happening. Pull up all the trees, and our health is being depleted because the air is being polluted, and the very thing that helps the air get clean is gone. Things like that. We feel like we have no say in those things. So on the back end, we have things like RHI, which is an amazing building that we get help from, and we'll take money from there, and we're like get the money to get paid to do all these projects, do all these jobs around the community. But like when we feel like we have no say to put change into our community because everything's already changing before our very eyes, then we spend our money on other things, and we're like going to other fields, and we step outside of the community, and that affects our health as well, because like we're not like it's all intersecting in those ways, because then we're not like looking out for our health, we're not thinking about our health, we're like not learning from the community, and we're not getting invested into what the community is trying to do, trying to say or solve itself with, in terms of like the farm. Like people are not investing in the farm because of like they feel like they have no change in the community. So it's like, all right, they say they're doing change here, but it's like I don't really believe it. Like these are the conversations I have with the youth. It's like I don't know how people like they tell me about how people feel about the farm because of like jobs they worked back in the day. It's like, okay, I feel like I was doing all this work and not doing anything to change my community, or I was doing all this work and getting this little bit of outcome and this little bit of knowledge that I didn't even apply because I couldn't change my community, things like that. And the way it's intersecting is really crazy, because you would think that like these things would never have to do with the farm, and farming is like the construction outside affects the farm in those ways. So those are the things I think are like put in place, like all like racism and every conversation that is like coming to the forefront of today are all effects of what's going on today, and how they all affect our health and the food and how we manage our waste and everything. Because also because like things like we have this the way our zones are redlined, and the way sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry to formulate my words. They treat this place like it's trash, basically, and treat this place like it's not ours. So we treat it like it's not ours. We treat it like it's trash. So we don't know how to some people don't know how, like we're not conscious of how we're producing our waste. We're not conscious of throwing food into soil so it turns into nutrients. We're just throwing it away because it's like, okay, this trash already there. I don't have any I don't have any connection to this building, so I'm gonna throw something on that floor over there. This is just an open field with nothing in there. I see no potential. Nobody's been doing anything for years. If I go in there, it's illegal, I'll get arrested. So I'm gonna throw my trash in there, things like that. But yeah, with that being said, yeah, so I feel like it stems from those things, and they're all intersecting those ways, and they affect our health in different ways that, you know, that we're here to change. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap that up in here. Thank you.
I just want to jump in and say that's incredible. And I think it just sounds like every single thing, every single detail that you just mentioned stems from people in a community not being consulted as and not being treated as stakeholders. And we are all stakeholders. We all have value, and we are all stakeholders. And I think that the work that you do helps sort of remediate that. Just like it's remediating the soil, just like it's improving the soil, you're putting compost on by allowing people to participate. But thank you that you spelled that out so well. I'm so glad this is being recorded.
Yeah, and in addition to that, you know, Rhonda's statement about we're all stakeholders is like super important, you know, because we're talking about environmental injustice, structural racism, and, you know, me being what this is a term that I'm going to introduce to some of you all who may not be aware. FBA, Foundational Black American. Me being somebody who identifies as a foundational Black American, you know, we are victims of, you know, white supremacy disguised as white fragility disguised as white supremacy. So we are victims of that as people of color, as Black and brown people, but we're also victors as well. You know, we're here, we're making a change, we're having this conversation, we do have agency and we do have say-so and power in the matter. And part of my work as a human being, and part of you all being here on this panel is to show and uplift and create a pathway for you to be successful and be a victor, even in the face of adversity. So you can just, you know, tell by the passion of you know, how Justin just, you know, spoke that it's a lot, you know, and we need more time, we need more opportunities to, you know, continue this conversation. So yeah, I just want you, Justin, Stephen, Jesse, to know that we are the victims, you are the victims, but you're also a victor as well. So just, you know, keep on going. So
Thank you.
Yeah, Jesse or Stephen next.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and jump in now.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of jump to what Justin was saying about the intersections between things, and then what you, Akhmose, were saying about the power that we hold in communities. And I bring that up because I feel like one of the things I notice most in my own work is how many barriers there are to like empowered participation in different movements and different initiatives that are combating a lot of these violent systems that we're up against. And it's because when we're talking about these intersections, disenfranchisement works the same way. So, you know, it's not just you're living in a community that's suffering from food apartheid, you're also living in a community where you have more proximity to air pollution, to different forms of waste colonialism. You are most likely to live in an area that has schools that are underfunded. You're most likely to live in an area with hospitals that are underfunded. You're most likely to live in an area where you have less access to green spaces. And so you have all of these different things combining, and together they're directly impacting your ability to participate in, you know what I mean, like panels like we're doing right now, and just other forms of, I guess, justice building initiatives. And it really highlights this important relationship between like our behavior and infrastructure and policy, and how different the infrastructure and policy look depending on where you live, and depending on whether or not you live in an area that has like a high accumulation of wealth that's being bestowed upon the community or something like that. So when we're talking about solutions and empowered engagement in these things that we're talking about, I just think it's really important to be very honest about those barriers and how they are being disproportionately put onto the backs of primarily Black and Indigenous communities. And yeah, I'd say that's how that shows up mostly in my work, is because one of my biggest things is, you know, trying to increase participation and more coalition building, community building against these things. And it's really, I mean, it's just difficult to really stare all of those different barriers in the face and see who's being most deeply impacted by them. But as was mentioned, there are people obviously showing up and combating and doing the coalition building and the community building, but there's just a lot left to do to ensure that it's as equitable as possible.
I can't resist my impulse to respond to your incredible comments with, please join us in the Brooklyn SWAB, and all of you. And these kinds of conversations are so important, and like I said, need to be embedded in every aspect of governance, and community participation. But Thank you. Thank you for those wonderful comments. I love empowered participation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, oh, that's great.
Stephen?
Sure. You know, I feel like both Justin and Jesse honestly like really set the stage in terms of, you know, how these things really show up. You know, that's just how they show up in reality. And, you know, in terms of how it manifests, you know, it's all those things y'all mentioned. It manifests by way of health. It also manifests in terms of, you know, value, how people outside of those communities, you know, perceive, you know, what are, you know, communities like, where that value lies. But then within the community, there's also, I think, you know, there's contention in terms of, you know, how folks then value what they have within their community, because there's so many combating forces, right, in terms of all of these injustices coming from every possible angle, you know, that sometimes, I mean, there's other priorities, right? I mean, literally people are just trying to survive, you know, honestly trying to survive. And so maybe there isn't necessarily as much time to, you know, to come together and build a coalition or whatever the case is. That being said, we still do see that those things are happening, right? And so, you know, we work primarily with folks in NYCHA communities, right? And so they're essentially at the forefront of Justin and just everything, right, that y'all have mentioned. And so when it comes to the lack of access, be it food, health, whatever the case is, even when it comes to economic opportunity, one of the things that I think, and Akhmose, this kind of comes off of your Victor's, you know, point, is that I think it actually provides a lot of unconventional opportunity, because there are a lot of gaps to fill, and those gaps need to be filled in a lot of unconventional ways, in ways that honestly just have not been, either there's nothing there to begin with, or they, you know, they've tried and failed. And so there is a lot of people out there that want to see change. You know, there's folks that are pursuing that change, and there's also a lot of, you know, a huge population, you know, that wants to also see change. And I think there isn't necessarily as much information or access to information in terms of how to really pursue that type of change. And so again, you know, seeing and having these conversations here and being able to, you know, spread the word, be it, you know, in Brooklyn SWAB, or, you know, having folks come out to sites and volunteering, engaging, just literally being in a green space and trying to spread the word. You know, it's pushing the envelope in that way, where folks can look at their space or whatever, you know, whatever the situation is, says, you know, this is something that I can actually make a change, you know, for it. Sometimes it seems daunting, you know, it is possible, right? And so, yeah, those are my thoughts there.
I love that. Filling gaps in unconventional ways.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice. So in the essence of time right now in my head, I'm like, why is this only 90 minutes? Oh my God, we need 3 hours. What the freak? In the essence of time, we have to power through over the next 10 to 12 minutes before we move on to the next section. And so we have 3 super important questions that we want to address. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Justin, for providing what it is you just shared. And so for the next 3 questions, we're going to ask that you each either give a short response. Let's just do that. Short response, 30 seconds, 30 moments would be great. So the next question is, could you talk about the healing aspect of your work? That could be in the work that you do, what mental health advantages or healing have you seen? What, you know, physical health advantages have you seen? Case in point, one day I was dealing with some pain. I went to Red Hook Farm. Justin called me over and was like, hey, Akhmose, let's go to this side of the farm. Here's some stinging nettle. If you put this on that part of your knee or your leg and let that sit for X amount of minutes, that should provide the healing and relief that you need. And I was like blown away by that, of like how in our community, like it is a medicine cabinet, an outdoor medicine cabinet of the sort. But before I get riled up, and so can you talk about the healing aspect of the work that you do in about 30 moments or so, each one of you?
I'll hop in. I'll kick it off. So, we are working out on these eco-hub sites, our farms, and working with the soil is a beautiful thing. If you haven't, for anybody on the call who hasn't worked with the soil, get your hands a little dirty with some soil. It's good. It is very healing. A lot of folks, it's a little bit different for everyone, but working with the soil is great. You're outside, praise the sun, even on cold, windy days, whatever the case is. And you can get yourself acclimated with the natural remedies. So, there's lavender. There is, you called out the stinging nettle, right? There's chamomile. Many different ways that folks can, plant and just be around these things and just be around nature. You have pollinators and bees going around. You are at, even in the middle of this concrete jungle, you can be at peace, in a little bit of green space. And so, working with your hands and being outside, being in touch with the soil and the earth. I've heard good things.
Justin?
Plenty of ways, from herbs that we have on the farm, exactly what Akhmose describes. Kudos, shout outs to Sue. She's like a herb doctor on the farm. She like brews up tea. She somebody gets a bump or a scrape, she brings them to the herbs and fixes them up. Things like that. We have aromatherapy and body butters that are meant to heal the skin and nourish your body and skin instead of just hydrating and things like that on a surface level of healing. From our farm Columbia coordinator, Karan, tapping with his business, Just Smile Aromas. Youth come to the farm, connect with us, express themselves, and we give them that space and that freedom. They're upset, we give them a hammer. They hammer it out on an infrastructure project, and they walk around happy and smiling with their friends and goes to tell everybody about the great experience that they had on their farm instead of taking that aggression out somewhere else. Exactly, touching the plants, planting. People always tell me it's a meditative process. They come here to get away, to get out of the space of New York, slow down, get out of the fast way. And yeah, things like that. Yeah, so, very sweet.
That's Dr. Karan.
Yeah, I think one of the most healing aspects of the work is actually building community with people and coming together, not just for a common goal, but working together to heal where we live together. Really helps you build strong bonds and kind of build relationships outside of general ones that we have in day-to-day life that might be more, I don't know, rooted in weird power dynamics, or it's just everybody is like coming to the garden or coming to the compost pile to really work together and yeah, just heal each other by healing the place that we live together. And there's just something really great about that. Coming together and building community itself is healing.
Mm-hmm. I thank you for that. I feel like that this kind of healing, that physical, mental healing, always is healing of community in some ways, especially when you're working on these projects together. It's I'm hearing that from all of you, and it's good to hear, and we're grateful. Again, grateful for the work you do. Go ahead.
Absolutely, Rhonda. And the reason why that question came up, very briefly, is because we're talking about, environmental injustice and structural racism. And I'm going to tip my hand a bit. Part of that solution is that, for us to be more self-sufficient. Speaking about the farm and the work that we do outside with the soil and the trees and the plants and the fruits, being a supplement to ways of healing, not just the healthcare system, which has its own challenges, amongst our people or against our people, but just, utilizing all your resources around you. And there are, places that we can go to in our neighborhoods, even though it might be downtrodden, and we're dealing with a lot that are awesome and places of, healing. And that's a part of justice that we could take upon ourselves and just be more self-reliant, self-sufficient. So thank you all for being a part of that work.
Yeah. So now we're going to move to the breakout groups. And we talked for a little bit longer because our panelists had so much great stuff to say. So we're going to go, the breakout groups will be a little bit shorter, but the question, we are going to take a little bit of time to discuss a final question, and then we're going to share back our answers when we come back together. And while you're in the group, just make sure you choose a representative in each group to share back the answers. And please remember to ask consent to share another person's story before you do that. Do you want to tell a question, Akhmose?
Yeah. Because I know we have some minutes to play with, like 5 minutes. And so I wanted to like have us sneak in another question or two real quick, if we can. Let's go with what in terms of all of what we're speaking about, if we can get one of you to respond to this question, and then maybe two of you to respond to the next question in the next 5 minutes. That would be awesome. What support do you need for, I'm sorry, Rhonda?
No, go ahead.
What support do you need for your programs in terms of funding or resources? What city policies would help with this in terms of being more environmentally justified? So what support do you need for your specific programs and the work that you do? And or what city policies will help move this forward? Who wants to take that? Going once, going twice.
We can also think about it if you want to think about it, and we can come back.
Awesome. You know, we were speaking about Rhonda, Liz, and I were speaking about the times that we're in, and this is a social media age. And so if we were having this conversation 15 years ago, it'd be very, very different than where we're at today with how social media has shaped our world and how we're shaping our world by way of it. So how do you envision social media being a part of the work that you all do, either as an organization or as an individual in doing this work? How do you envision that being a part of moving things forward and making people aware of what's going on as it pertains to environmental injustice and bringing about environmental justice? Like, what's the role of social media for you?
So I feel like social media helps to amplify you know, the work that's being done, and also I'll just provide an additional perspective. I think a lot of work, especially, you know, environmental work, or even especially when it comes to waste, happens behind the scenes where people don't necessarily see what's going on. There's a very limited level of visibility into what's going on, let's say within, you know, waste management, and so yeah, just being able to amplify the work that's being done and have people see it. And, you know, it also it provides a platform for discussion to pop up. I tend to see that folks will ask, like, oh, where can I learn more? This is great work that folks are doing. Like, how can I sign up for whatever the case is? And so social media, I think, plays an important role, again, yeah, in terms of just literally spreading the word and providing that additional perspective. I think that folks don't always necessarily, that they're not always privy to.
To piggyback off of what he was saying, that also gives us an opportunity to connect with people all over the world. And so not only can we connect with them and learn from each other, we can also share models, like successful models of responding to certain crises. And so not only are we, you know, sharing this information and building community in these digital platforms, we're also able to go, this is my problem. Have you dealt with this problem before? How did you deal with it? And you can literally do this across countries, cities, wherever. It's really limitless to who your teachers can be.
That's great.
And I'll jump in there for like 2 seconds. I feel like it also like gives you a chance to look back and say, like, this is a milestone. Like, we did that. Like, that's amazing. Like, look at history in a way. And then it's kind of like controlling your own narrative. You get to put that out into the world, how you want to view yourself. And you have your own camera. And I think that's important for especially the POC communities or disenfranchised communities, to give them a voice in the way, their own voice, directly coming from them, showing the work that they do and how they get to live it.
Awesome. 7:35. Awesome. I'm gonna push the envelope and throw in one more question because I think it's super, super important. Can each of you in about 15, 20 moments share a big dream of yours for a more sustainable and equitable future? Justin, go. Like what's a big picture? What's like the end goal that you'd like to see, come out of this? Like what does that look like?
Honestly, big picture is communal sovereignty. I would like to see more people. I would like to see sovereignty around politics, people and their own bodies governing themselves, and also our food, so our environment. So I feel like us being able to control our say so in that, and like even like looking to someone who is from the community to get like things like to get resources, things like that. Like and that's the ultimate goal of mine. Like not having to outsource for things and having things in our immediate community as it should be, molding our community to what we need it to be, making our community basically, communal sovereignty.
I love that.
Jesse?
Or
Stephen?
No.
Okay.
Jesse, you go first. You go first.
Yeah. My big dream is that eventually sustainability isn't seen as a goal, but a point of departure, and moving more towards an abundance mindset instead of a scarcity mindset, and also returning all of the stolen land.
Wow, that's great.
I'm just taking notes.
Me too. Totally taking notes.
These terms. Wow.
Yeah.
The pressure's on. Go ahead.
All right, I'll keep it short. A circular, inclusive economy. That's what I'm gonna roll with.
Tell us more in 10 moments.
Oh, okay, that's fine. So more in that, it's community owned, in that self-sufficiency, like Justin said, that sovereignty, and having that be something that is actually inclusive, as opposed to it just being another system that's there to kind of just purpose. There's ownership from the community in terms of owning like what that looks like, and again having it be inclusive so that there are opportunities, and it's not something that is it's not like overlaid. The community is actually embedded in, and it's part of the community. So that's the idea there.
That's really great. I feel like this is the work that you guys are all doing every day, is taking steps toward these big dreams. It moves us all closer, and everyone you touch, it moves closer to achieving those big dreams. That's all we can do, right? Take the steps. So maybe we should move on to the breakout groups. So just to repeat, we're gonna have a couple minutes to discuss, then we're gonna share back our answers. Again, make sure you choose a representative and make sure you have permission to share the other person's story. And the question is, what's one thing you've learned today about racial justice and environmental justice? Or what do you think can be done on an individual organizational level to address what you've learned about racial justice and environmental justice? You can identify systemic issues that prevent this from happening, and you can also identify probable solutions. So Akhmose brought that in. So steps that are actually doable, that are probable to happen, right? Akhmose?
Probable, yes.
Yeah.
Because anything is possible, quote unquote, but what is probable? What's the probability of something happening or being attained versus possibility?
Okay, great. So thanks everybody for this lively and respectful conversation. We're going to move on to another little smaller conversations, and then we'll come back. We'll see you all in a minute. So Kevin is going to put us in our breakout rooms. Thanks, everybody.
I think everybody's back.
Okay, so who was in group one? Who's the court reporter for group one? Just kidding.
I kind of like forgot my group number. Was I in group 1? Does anybody in my group know?
You were, Akhmose, I can tell you that.
Okay, awesome. And as we were literally wrapping, I heard someone's voice saying that they wanted to be the representative. Or did I mishear? Talking to the people in my group.
Do it, go for it.
So it was a mix, but the one through line was kind of like what Justin touched on about community sovereignty, or just being self-reliant, and by way of urban farms, urban gardens, being aware, being in touch, and getting those skill sets that you need, being informed, and not just being in the field, working with the people, and but also having a say-so in who we elect, and be aware of like the policies that particular person might be pushing or presenting, and if it's not in alignment with environmental justice and what it is we're talking about, then we don't back them. So policy and procedure and law is where it's at, to definitely move the needle forward. So that was really important. Hopefully I didn't miss anything from anyone. But yeah, I think just real quick, being self-reliant, self-sufficient is where it's at, about changing our mind about ourselves and our communities, and then everything else with other people looking at us a different way, that's a bonus, but it starts with us.
Great, thank you. Okay, group 2. I just want to make sure we get through everybody.
Hi, I was in group 2. Have a participant, Shakara, who wanted to share what we had spoke about.
Yes, so we basically kind of discussed our personal experiences working in environmental justice, environmentalism, and then towards the end had a through line in terms of sort of what we can do to improve. And I kind of brought up, because I'm personally currently experiencing disability, and so thinking about in terms of having more access, thinking about all the different marginalities that are affected by sustainability, and sometimes the things that we think of that would be improvement, even in terms of race reduction, are actually harmful to different disabled or different members of the disabled community. And so how do we improve accessibility, bring more people to have a seat at the table, so that we can have a more holistic thought in terms of how we're addressing the issues that we're dealing with.
Great, thank you.
It cannot
Yes.
also says I keep remembering that, talking about the solutions and the tangible solutions, that the probable solutions that we come with, and Shakara and who was also in our breakout room discussed also basically the solutions around that, which would be have more inclusivity. And I thought that was an amazing point, and touched on things like having conversations like this and having Zoom, and not being able to be in proximity with these people and being self-reliant. We could come together on Zoom, have these conversations, and bring people to the table. So, yeah.
Great, that's great, thank you. So can we move on to group 3?
Hi, I'm the spokesperson for Group 3. So we talked a little bit about how we learned about different environmental organizations that were in New York City through this panel. And then we touched on what Justin had discussed about how sometimes communities can feel disempowered and dehumanized, and that people can internalize that. And that can be compounded over generations when people live in the same community that's under the same conditions, and how profound that trauma can be. And then in terms of steps, we talked about donating to gardens, going to community board meetings, being involved if you can be, and then also volunteering time at places like community gardens.
Nice, okay, thank you. Thank you, very quickly, very concise. and great comments. Group 4. Go ahead and unmute yourself if you're the spokesperson for Group 4.
Group 4 was our group, and I think we lost. Oh, there's Stephanie. Stephanie, you're not unmuted. We're at group 4.
Yeah.
I lost you for a second.
What group I was confused. But my name is Stephanie. Hello. So our group was mentioning about how basically what everyone else was saying, community involvement, community sovereignty, and also we touched on how like even the littlest steps can make a big change. I brought up my community. I live in Jersey, so I live in
Jersey.
I live in Hudson County, so everyone is like like everyone. If you cross the street, it's Jersey City, it's Union City, it's North Bergen. Like everyone is connected, so like we shouldn't just limit to our own town, our own circle. We can also like if something's happening, let's say I live in North Bergen, so if something's happening in Newark, I'm gonna be in that Board of Commissioners meeting to like advocate for the lead poisoning that's been happening for so many years, and like just small steps like that, joining these Zoom calls. And how I mentioned before, I didn't really get involved with my community until social media, like the topic was mentioned, and it was me and this other person in my town that we were like, let's go to this Board of Commissioners meeting and like tell them like we need to be more sustainable. And like a lot of politics and stuff, they're like, yeah, they set it aside, and then no change is happening. When we gotta keep showing up at these meetings, and that's how changes happen. And even as small as another organization in Jersey City that does like cleanups, Clean Green Jersey, I think, but they do cleanups, and then people see that and they're like, wow, like people actually care. And then when they see that, they want to be involved. So even small steps like that.
Nice. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, we can't overlook the small steps or steps we see every day. So Group 5.
I think I might be Group 5. I didn't
Yeah,
catch the number.
you are.
Hi, you guys. Good evening, everyone. I think the two things that we realized right away was that waste is awful.
Yeah.
And that we didn't have enough time to talk about it. We didn't have to, so we kind of were like all over the place, and I was super excited. I think just in talking about being cut off literally by the highway, I understand that because I'm a little further up the highway on the Prospect Expressway, closer to the thing. And it was just, I used to shop for green vegetables in the city. I've been here 30 years, you know, I started a garden here. But we were talking about some of the people in my group were involved in SWAB, which I've never heard of before, which I'm like, oh yes, this is great. And we were talking about like, how does what I was saying, I was in my garden today, pointing out to everyone that walked by, showing them the praying mantis egg case, because we were talking about leave the leaves and no mow May, and like, I live in an apartment building. And that is how I communicate with the community, because my community is not really much of a community. It's now been targeted for upscale development and everything. But before that, it was like the lower side of Park Slope. But the main thing is about being disempowered. And what we brought up and we all agreed upon is that everyone cares about this. When you ask them, do you care about this? They say yes, but everyone is just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to say. And I feel like no one's listening. And so I think that was my main takeaway from what the three of us we all had things to say. We were trying to listen to each other. But I think the main thing is we need an avenue to talk. We need discourse. Mm-hmm. That's where we feel.
That's great. That's really important. And thank you for that.
I would like to offer up to your point about, you know, how that can be fixed or helped is to come on down to Red Hook, you know, like be in the community and be a part of, like, you know, the conversation, and, you know, the ways of how you can help will definitely, like, you know, come into being. Just you even volunteering at an urban garden, urban farm, you know, is like part of that help and assistance, and just talk, you know, talk amongst the people, talk to people like Justin, you know, Stephen, you know, Jesse, and, you know, the answers. We all have the answers, you know, so we just, yeah.
We do, absolutely. So the last group is group 6. I think that 6 is the last group. I was in group 6. There were 2 other people there. Nobody wanted to report back. I mean, maybe, am I the last group? I'll just talk and then.
We were in group 7. There was a group 7.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. So I'll make it really quick. I was going to talk for a long time, but now I'm just kidding. We talked about how to make change that is embedded and not just tacked on, to bring it into more of a holistic level. The thing that resonated with everyone in our group, they were talking about sovereignty and social media, and how social media sort of broadens the community to make a space for sovereignty, for people to conceptualize even sovereignty, because otherwise sovereignty is an issue, and how to use social media to bring sovereignty into geographic boundaries, and also ethnic boundaries, gender boundaries, everything. And also the last thing that we said was that it's about identifying multiple leaders, and not assigning leaders from the outside, but identifying leaders based on their support, participation. Okay, shall we talk about group 7 now? Sorry for not.
No worries at all. Okay. First and foremost, folks in group 7, I didn't get a chance to get your permission so I won't share any like specific stories, but I'll do my best to share the takeaways. Just keep me honest. And so, you know, started off the conversation around education, right? And education being one of, you know, the kind of, you know, one of the components that that needs to happen in like across all fronts, right? And so when we're talking injustice, injustice is coming at folks from social, racial, environmental, right? It's coming from all these different directions. And so having education be available, right, in a lot of different capacities, be it you know, teaching garden classes, right, being able to grow vegetables, go out and like be able to distribute them. If you know, when we're seeing that folks do not have access, right, to healthy produce, you know, one of the members in our group was talking about how they, you know, they were doing some research and was able to take it upon themselves to go up and start up a you know, food distribution you know, process, right? And so you know, there's these ways of being able to become active, right? Like you see an issue, right, and try to provide a solution for it. Again, going back to you know, one of the initial things we talked about in the larger group, which was that there are these systems already in place that, you know, are not you know, doing their job. So when we live in the city, right, and we see that there isn't municipal composting going on, right? Okay, well then, you know, we're approaching that from the community perspective in terms of taking that upon ourselves. Like, let's get these community gardens and this composting going, and also applying pressure, you know, from a civic perspective, right? So having folks go out, like vote, learn, right, and learn about the different candidates. Who do you want to support? Who's going to push the envelope? And, you know, just apply that pressure from all different components, because again, it's something that we've seen, it's not being done as it is right now, right? And so being able to identify that collectively and spread the word in as many ways as possible. It's, you know, it's full on spectrum that we have to communicate across, and that was the idea.
That's great. Is there anybody in any group who didn't who just wants to add one quick thing? Oh, Joyce.
Thank you.
And
can you hear me?
Yes.
Quick. So I don't live in Brooklyn. I'm a member of the Manhattan Solid Waste Advisory Board, and I think we certainly do a lot of good around solid waste and in service to the environment. But I think there's a need for organizations that combine the environment and issues of racism. So I'm also a member of We Act in Northern Manhattan, which is an amazing group, and it's headed by people of color. I'm probably not eligible to, take any kind of leadership role in that organization, but I'm fascinated by all the information that comes out that people in Northern Manhattan and Manhattan generally need to know to protect themselves, whether it's about policies, anything. And so I think it would be great if, every borough has such an organization as well as a SWAB. So I just wanted to say that because it's a really impressive kind of organization that needs to happen.
Okay, that's great. Thanks a lot, Joyce, for adding that. Jesse, did I see that you wanted to say something? We're going to give panelists also.
Quickly.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something just very briefly about like leadership in community spaces, and invite and encourage people to consider alternatives to that dynamic model. Maybe more towards like an inclusive collective type of leadership model, because I think there are times when like even using those types of terms can lead to hierarchies and sometimes power imbalances, and it can lead to some people not having as much of a voice. And so I think the language of leadership is fine, but I think it's really important to just be very deliberate and as democratic as possible when it comes to actually navigating the actual, when you're actually doing the stuff, when you're actually organizing, just seeing other ways of possibly engaging with each other and listening to each other, talking to each other, and seeing who's like the expert in the room, because everybody's an expert in the room in some way. So I just wanted to share that consideration.
I love that, because I'm not often the expert in the room, but I'm a big talker. So I like to pass the ball to people. Like that's another thing you can do. Like everybody has a job and a skill and a talent, and you can bring that to what you're doing. And that was great that was a good final, that's an amazing final word if you'd like that to be, but we'll give you another chance to say a final word. Akhmose, do you want to kick it off with final thank yous and words? Everyone's stayed after 8. Thank you so much.
Yes. This is a macro and a micro, conversation, to be blunt and direct. We're speaking about, environmental racism and injustice and, structural racism and whatnot. Like I mentioned earlier, this country is ran off of, or the infrastructure is based in quote unquote white supremacy overall, or fragility, supremacy, whatever, a certain kind of thinking and way of being that predominantly benefits a certain group of people. And so that's the larger conversation and issue that we're facing as Black and brown people. I'm going to speak as a foundational Black American specifically, and as it pertains to reparations. But on the micro level, this is what we're talking about here. And I think that we can balance things out, or at least leave our mark, do our part, keep hope alive, as generic and cliche as that sounds. But not just keep the faith, but faith without works is faith in vain. So get to work, be self-sufficient, and change your mindset about yourself by getting skilled up. Thus you change your community, and like I said, others will have a different perspective and maybe have a different ear. And so I definitely feel like we are the victims, we are the victors as well. We're still here, and we still have agency in this matter. And power doesn't give it away. It has to be forced away. And this conversation is us doing it in a cordial way, and like a peaceful warning, and being like, this is, we're like the last resort of pleas. We're asking amicably to let's join as a collective of all walks of life, and let's try to, make the world more equitable and make our environment more equitable. So let's continue to do our part and leave our mark. And thank you all for your time and your energy.
Thank you. I just want to say, I'm going to echo your skill up. I try to skill up whenever I can, and I'd like to do that as well. And would Justin or Steve or even Jesse, if you have more final words to say, would you like to say some final words?
I cannot hear me.
Yeah, let's start with Steve, Jesse, and then Justin. Stephen and Child.
All right, she was asking if y'all could hear her.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you very well.
See if they can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Final words, honestly, I don't even know if this sounds like cliche, but keep on fighting the good fight, because it is one in which there is progress, and there are a lot of hurdles. I mean, even seeing in chat right now, we see that, the city has made it clear, in terms of how finances are laid out, that, composting and other initiatives are not, on their priority. And so that's not necessarily a defeat, that's just a hurdle, that we keep on moving through. And so, for everyone that's out here tonight, that has been doing this work and continues to do it, and even just showing up here to be present at these conversations today, that's representative of, how we keep on moving forward. So yeah, that's what I have on my end.
Thank you. Excellent. So,
Justine?
Wait, did you say Jesse?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't say it. I didn't say it appropriately. Jesse?
Yeah. The main thing I would add is to be gentle and patient with yourself, and show self-compassion and rest, because we can't do this work if we're all burnt out. And I know that it's almost impossible to avoid burnout, but any moment you possibly can take to let your body and mind and spirit rest so that you can come back stronger to keep doing the work is good.
That's beautiful. I need to hear that. And Justin.
That was an amazing breath of relaxation, taking it felt like a deep breath just now, what you said. And I want to appreciate y'all all for coming out and hearing our voices, because that's exactly where it starts. This is where the community is, and it doesn't have to be right around the corner. We're reaching people from all over, like we've been saying all night. And that's a great thing. We can communicate, connect, and look for solutions together in any way that we can. It's like the community is growing just in this one call. And yeah, with that being said, appreciate y'all. I want to encourage y'all to come out to Red Hook Farms and connect with us. We're going to have a lot of fun. One thing I believe that this should be is fun. The movement should definitely be fun. We're coming out, we're having these conversations, and we're doing our thing. We're holding our hands over the fire and making s'mores after work and things like that. Just chopping it up and joking around, but also doing the work that we need to heal the community and heal ourselves, and healing ourselves in the process as well. I see this every day. I know I shared a lot of heavy things today. I could look outside my window and see all these things going on, but I'll go to the farm and I escape from all of that while simultaneously healing the land and healing people, healing myself, and connecting with people that want to do the same thing. So appreciate y'all for that, and I encourage y'all to come out and join our community and give me a chance to come out and reach out to y'all, and let's connect and build these bridges. So appreciate y'all for coming out.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm inviting everyone to a Brooklyn SWAB meeting is not anything like coming out and putting our hands in the soil, but it's something anyway, and it leads to more conversations like this. So I really hope that you would all join the Brooklyn SWAB. It's the first Monday of every month, and it's on Zoom. It's from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. You can reach us on email at swab.brooklyn@gmail.com. Thank you guys all for joining us tonight, and I guess we'll send you a follow-up email. Oh, Akhmose.
One more thing, real quick. Thank you to the BkSWAB, Rhonda, Oliver, Sherry, Liz, all of you. And the contact information for the panelists.
We'll send a follow-up email.
Oh, got you. All right.
Yep. Yeah, we didn't get to that.
There were we had a what can you do sort of contact information. So just look for that in your email. I hope it doesn't get lost. Really look for it.
And we typically post the conversations up on YouTube, so you'll be able to play it back.
Yay.
Thank you, Miriam.
And the recording will be on the website?
Yeah, it will be on the our YouTube channel.
Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so very, very much. Peace and love.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Blessings to all. Blessings to all.
Blessings.